Buddy, welcome back to the Advanced Mortgage Solutions podcast. I'm Joel Sadler, and you're with your expert, Scott Miller, founder from Advanced Mortgage Solutions. In today's episode, we're going a slightly different change of tack. It's less technical, but it's more emotive. So when people buy their first home or any major purchase in their life, there's always a bit of nerves. Scott's worked with thousands of people across the Canterbury area in terms of helping them get into their first home. So Scott, give us some tips in your experience around this whole, how do you manage nerves and how do people work their way through the journey in a way that's less stressful, I suppose?
Buying your house is, let's be honest, pretty much the biggest thing you're ever going to buy. You're probably not going to buy your forever house or palace straight off the mark. And it means that it's new, it is exciting, but it's new and it's unknown, and there's many moving parts to sort of securing a property. And those parts include, a financial side of things, a legal side of things, a bargaining side of things. There's interactions with different people through the process. And it can be quite, daunting, the whole process in itself, especially as you're starting out. The good thing to know, I suppose, is the further you get through the process of buying a house, the more's behind you now. You're sort of eating away and getting to a solution, which would be to purchase the house to live in. And that's mostly what a
Yeah.
first purchase is. We do have the occasional first purchase, a person wants to buy a rental. It's not that common because they can't use their KiwiSaver and things. So it's more common they're buying themselves a house. And of course, there's more of an emotional connection to that kind of purchase than purchasing a rental property that someone else is going to live in. So again, it just
Yeah.
brings a different kind of perspective to the overall process. But I think the thing, and we've touched on it before, as long as you've got the professionals in your team and you let your professionals do the jobs that you've taken them on board in your team to do, then you're pretty much going to get from one end of the process to the other in a easy and less stressful way than, say, going out and trying to do it all yourselves. Some people, for example, don't really want to talk directly to a bank. They feel a little bit intimidated by going into a branch and sort of spilling their life out in front of someone. And in that instance, prefers to come to someone like a financial advisor or broker to do that for them. It's a little bit more, I suppose, just a one-on-one rather than sort of going into a big corporate sort of feeling. And that can
Yeah.
assist in getting the information that we need in a more relaxed kind of way, I suppose is the way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. You're almost like an advocate, for whatever better word, in terms of, you're like you said, you're in that more relaxed environment, one on one. It's not in the big sort of corporate-y,
Yeah.
um, confronting environment. Tell me a little bit. So that's, working through the process. You've touched on this before, but tell us about how important it is to be honest when people are working with you as well, to avoid those kind of stressful
Yeah,
things that can pop
100%.
up
Yeah,
later,
look,
you know?
part of the
Mm,
attraction, I suppose, is also being able to talk in a way that we can get some numbers and things down. And if there is some roadblocks initially, we can work on those roadblocks to get to a result before we actually tell our story to a lender. And by that stage, it might be too late. So if we can do that
mm.
pre-assessment, have some time with you to work out where your statement of position sits in the big scheme of things, and if there needs to be some tweaks in there, then it gives us the time to do that. And we haven't said anything to the bank yet. So again, it's that preparation and feeling like you're ready to move rather than, oh my goodness, am I, aren't I? All of those sorts of things. Um, but going to
Yeah.
your question there, again, it's all around having an accurate statement of position that we can go to a bank with, especially on the finance side of things. That means the bank's just basically going to go tick, 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 approved, move on to the next application. You sort of want to not even be a thought in the assessor's mind because it's just so straightforward. We know that this is a good deal,
Yeah.
and let's make it so by offering a conditional offer, or what most people call a pre-approval. Um, the banks and the ways in which information can be found out about people nowadays is, oh my goodness, it would surprise you to find out what people can find out about an individual, particularly with credit checks nowadays. There's
Right.
just so much information on those credit checks that
Yeah.
it's really you don't want to be disingenuous or to be in a position where you're not being fully transparent in the statement of position. Exaggeration point
Yeah.
would be, try to hide a car loan in the hope that the bank won't find it, sort of thing. I mean, people don't generally do that, but that would be an example where the bank could very easily find that there is lending on under your name or, an entity that you own, that would affect the way in which they'd assess an application. So it's better to have the
Yeah.
warts and all kind of approach and then highlight the warts and say, we're aware that there's some debt here. The
Yeah.
guys are working on it to reduce it as quickly as possible. And there's really nothing to see here, rather than trying to, push it off to the side and not mention it at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. A couple of experiences I had was I've owned a number of businesses over the years and projects, my core business, but also other sub companies, and not to do with property. One of them just happened to be with a certain bank, a company, and there was a falling out between two other parties and was sort of wound up. Didn't sort of go as we planned. I mean, it went as we planned, but the two key individuals couldn't get on, so we just decided to part ways. We had an overdraft facility with that. Company, and unbeknown to me, when we closed that down, there was like $1,000
Yeah,
overdraft
right.
still owing, and I didn't even think to
Yeah.
ask the question because there was another person managing the
Yeah.
accounts for us, right? So it went to down to sort of debt collection level, and that's when I found out
Wow.
about it because I got a phone call and I was like,
Yeah.
oh wow! And so we just settled straight away. We rang the other guy like half and bang,
Yeah.
done deal. And debt collection agents were great. Thanks very much. Sorted. But when I went to lend for my own personal home, say
Popped
five
up.
years later,
Yep.
it
Popped
came
up.
up.
Yeah. Look
Yeah.
at
And I had to explain, I had to go,
the
so it's
good
quite
thing about
interesting.
an
Yeah.
instance like that is it is quite easily seen as a genuine mistake, an error. You're not in
Yeah.
purposely trying to not disclose something. It was you
Yeah.
forgot that it
Yeah.
was there, and the banks are very good with that. If
Yeah.
you've got a really good explanation, or it is absolutely obvious that whoopsie, it just slipped the mind kind of thing, and it wasn't intentional
Yeah.
non-disclosure, that's fine. It happens all the time. Everyone forgets things. It's when it seems to be
Yeah.
intentional. And like, yeah, yeah, let's go back
Yes.
to the
Right.
example that we just gave. You've got a car loan. You know what I mean? You might have accidentally forgot that at one
Yeah.
stage I
Yeah.
had an overdraft facility that I might not have closed. That could slip your mind, but
Mm.
you've got a car loan, and there's no
Yeah.
accidentally
Yeah.
forgetting that sort of thing. So that's again, it just
Yeah.
comes back
Yeah.
to that open, honest thing, and again going tick tick tick, approved from an assessor's point of view. This is a nice, tidy, well explained application. Yeah,
Yeah. The other one that you've mentioned in the past was about upcoming pregnancies, and that I thought that was quite
yeah.
interesting around just having that conversation and disclosing that, potentially disclosing it based on your advice at the time, with
Well,
with
look,
a
it's
client.
fairly well
Yeah.
understood, the process of childbirth and the timelines that are involved in those
Mm.
sorts of things. We've been doing it for a while, as you can
Mm.
imagine. So, look,
Yeah.
the banks are very aware that that will affect an application. It will mean that likely
Mm.
the couple will go down to, one income, and there'll be another applicant, a very small applicant, but nonetheless a third applicant, or maybe more, depending on how big the family already is.
Yeah.
And they have an obligation not to put an applicant into a position of financial hardship. So, we have to be very detailed in our explanations around ongoing affordability and all those sorts of things. And there's a number of little sort of levers we can pull to ease the bank's mind around, okay, yep, the couple are expecting a child, but look, they've got some reserve funds over here to see them through the time where they're down to one wage. And here goes a letter from the employer and from the mother or father, depending on who wants to become the full-time mum, agreeing to go back
Yeah.
to work, and the associated costs of childcare are, or a grandma or a granddad is happily going to look after the wee one while the parents go back to work. So there's a number of ways of explaining those sorts of things, and turning up, not declaring it, and turning up at a branch, you know, very clearly heavily pregnant would be a bit of a surprise when they go through their notes and they say, but we didn't know you were pregnant. Yeah, so that
Mm.
has in the
Yeah.
past triggered some interesting conversations, as you could imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. And then moving back to, the process of of how it all unfolds, you know, when so someone I think back to when I again, bought my first home, I had no idea. I had a reasonable idea, but I had no idea of the steps and the detail involved. Is that something that you will explain to someone around, hey, when they sit down with you, hey, look, this is the general sort of timeline. These are the different people and the steps that,
100%, yeah.
you work
And
through?
look at that
Yeah.
is usually the biggest cause of anxiety or fear or, oh my God,
Yeah.
what am I getting myself into? You know, am I putting, something ahead of where it really should be in the order, all of these sorts of things. And
Yes.
as much as it might seem a little bit like smoke and mirrors when you first look at the process of buying a house, it is actually quite regimented in the same process time and time again. It's just because this is your first time, you've got no understanding of knowing this. So we very clearly put down some steps in an emailed process so you can always come back to that and reread it and review it. Where a conversation is sort of an instant sort of gratification, but then you might say, oh, did he say this or that, a week later? So we always put it down in writing and assist with the different aspects of buying a home. And it allows you to go back and read it as many times as you like, sort of thing. And plugging you into the professionals again, like solicitors or building reports people, they're all processes that are very, very well trodden. And when people start to understand what's in front of them, you can see the anxiety sort of slip away and they get more into it, as they should. They're buying their first home. It should be a really good time and a good
Yeah.
fun, not anxiety and all the things that, you tend
Yeah.
to start with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm a detail guy, so that email to me is music to my ears. I'd print it off probably
Yeah,
and or turn it into a checklist. You know what I mean? And just have it there and
yeah.
just with all the documentation, just to keep kind of aware of, hey, we're at this stage.
Yeah.
We've ticked that off,
Yeah, and look, the feedback that we get
Um,
is super helpful. We loved it. It allowed us to go and have several looks at things and um, made the process
mm,
easier. And I always say, put my number in your phone. I've got your number in my
yeah.
phone, so if I see you calling, I'm going to answer it, unless I'm on a podcast or something like this. But you know what I mean. You always say, "Oh, I've missed a call from Jack." I'll give Jack a call back because I know he's in the process of buying a house and he'll probably have a question that is being niggling at him or something along those lines. So, yeah, the
Yeah.
open communication's great. The email sets a good base, but then we're always available here by the phone as well, just for those more little detailed kind of conversations that might not suit email. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And then, just to sort of wrap up, tell us a little bit about, you mentioned it before about going and enjoying the process, but obviously, I've been over elated before, and I know people, you can get too elated and then be really disappointed when you don't get the property that you just managed to attach your heart to. Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
managing that
look, and it's
process,
so hard, isn't it? I
And
mean, I can
mm,
see
yeah,
just in the way that you've explained it, how at the time it meant so much to you, and then there was
yeah,
something that was seemingly coming in to stop the process, or so, Um,
mm,
look, I'm in a position that I work 100% for my clients, and that means when unfortunately you uncover something about a house or something like that, that I'm really going to have to tell you about because it might change your mind on buying it, because it's something considerable, maybe
mm,
structural or something along those lines. Uh, and it's very easy to get upset about it, but you sort of got to say, well, just because you don't want to hear it doesn't mean what I'm saying's wrong. It's just you don't want to hear it because you've already got emotionally attached to that property. So it is a sort
yeah,
of a situation that you've got to balance and say, hey, look, I know you're really attached to that house, but we've found this out about it. Knowing that, do we still want to continue? And then find solutions to problems or things along those lines. So it is a difficult one, particularly, again, we're going back to more that first home
yeah,
purchase or a purchase for yourself rather than a rental. Certain things about rentals, you're not really going to
yeah,
get upset because you're not living in it yourself. But yeah, it's just managing those
yeah,
expectations and knowing that we're all here trying to row in the same direction, but make the outcome as best as it possibly can for you, because it is likely one day you'll go to sell the same house that you're purchasing And that problem that we've found might then cause trouble when you go to sell that property down the line. And of course, at this time of the period of the process, you're not thinking about selling the house, you're thinking about buying the house. So those kind of thought patterns of what this might mean down the line is not really always taken into consideration.
Yeah. And again, first-hand experience there, learning there, which didn't really, bite me in terms of financially, but first time that we purchased back in the day, the building inspector, which we were paying, couldn't fit through the manhole. He was a slightly overweight guy. And so I said, well, I'll go down for a look with the camera, and climbed under the house and had a click round. And obviously, not an expert, but also emotionally, my partner was emotionally connected to the property already. I found out later that I could put a hammer through some rotten boards, literally just scrape my way through them. And, so it was a structural issue, and we'd already bought by that stage. So that really taught me to put the emotions aside, and really do the due diligence part properly. And luckily enough, when we come to sell, it was after the earthquake, so there was a lot of demand for stock, so it sold fine. But if it wasn't high demand time, it could have been a big issue for us to, try and sell. So really good point there, Scott, around, as emotive as you are buying a new home, really get the DD
due diligence. No, it is super important. And we started off by saying it's probably the biggest purchase you're ever going to make. So you sort of really want to make sure you're buying, or at least what you're buying is what it says it is. Like there isn't a little hidden thing like you found out afterwards and you're going, oh, that could really come back and hurt later on. So doing your due diligence is really, really important. And I suppose, because we are talking about the fear factor of buying a house, that kind of confirmation from a building report that the house is tickety-boo, and she is what she says it is, takes a lot of, again, that anxiety away. I've done that check and it's come back fine, so let's move on to the next thing, and it's just one further thing in the rear vision mirror before you get to that stage of actually purchasing the house.
Yeah. Brilliant, Scott. Thanks, as always. A wealth of advice. If people want to reach out to begin their journey with you, what's the best way
as always, we sort of finish off with this, don't we, Joel? Look, the website's the way to go. There's contact details, phone numbers, there's contact forms, there's information on there on buying your first home and getting your KiwiSaver, all the things that you'd expect to be on a website around giving financial advice. That's probably the one-stop shop right there.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Joel.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. We'll see you on the next episode. Cheers.